The story kicks off by introducing us to an underworld mafia boss named Kim Wong, who ran a massive gambling empire in Korea. He had a specific strategy. He'd let his opponents win at first, but once they got greedy and put a massive amount of money on the line, he'd craftily flip the game, crush them, and seize all their cash. This is exactly what he did to An-sang. An-sang was a small-time businessman whom Kim bankrupted after beating him in a game of Waikiki. But An-sang was so addicted to gambling that he was willing to risk everything just to win it back. He turned to his brother, Lee, for help, who happened to be a professional Waikiki player. An-sang begged him, "Play one last game for me. After this, we'll be set for life." An-sang took him to a spot near a restaurant. However, when Lee realized that An-sang intended to win by cheating, he refused to play and started to walk away. But An-sang pleaded with him, begging for just one last game because he was drowning in debt. He explained that if he couldn't pay it back, Kim Wong would kill him. Seeing his brother in such a pathetic state, Lee felt pity and couldn't say no. After that, An-sang went inside with a bag full of cash and started playing Waikiki against a young guy. Lee was sitting in a van, feeding him every single move through an earpiece. But the guy sitting across from him wasn't playing with his own brain either. Kim Wong had stationed expert players to give him instructions via headphones. When An-sang suddenly started winning, the guy grew suspicious because An-sang had never played that well before. Seeing his player lose, Kim brought in another master player who countered every move Lee made. The game took a very intense turn. They were just moments away from winning, but suddenly, the network went down and the live footage cut out. Lee told him, "I can't see anything. Just keep him distracted for a bit, maybe it'll come back." But despite Lee's warnings, his brother made a move on his own and lost the game. Lee knew his brother's life was now in grave danger. Right then, a man attacked Lee and beat him mercilessly. He dragged Lee inside, where Lee saw that they had brutally beaten his brother as well. It turned out the money in An-sang's bag was fake. He had hoped that, if he won the game, he'd be able to clear all his debts, but that didn't happen. Lee begged for his brother's life, but Kim told him he'd have to play the game in exchange for his brother. Meanwhile, Kim's left-hand man was torturing An-sang. After leaving him bloody, he ordered An-sang to swallow the Waikiki game pieces, threatening to kill Lee if he didn't. Seeing An-sang in that condition, Lee was terrified, and a die slipped from his hand and fell to the floor. Lee said, "It was an accident. That wasn't my move." But Kim replied, "You've already made your move. My rules apply here." In the end, An-sang swallowed all the pieces, making it difficult for him to breathe. Lee fell at their feet and begged for mercy, even promising to pay back all their money. Despite everything, Kim killed his brother. They beat him until he was half dead, and as they left, they forced the bloodstained knife Kim used to kill his brother into Lee's hand. The police believed Lee had killed his own brother, and he was sentenced to 7 years for murder. Next, we see the prison warden, who was obsessed with playing Waikiki. Every day, he played against an inmate everyone called Uncle Juan. Juan asked for a week's leave, but the warden set a condition. If Juan won the game, he'd be released for a week. Unfortunately, Juan lost. He began to feel like he'd spend the rest of his life in that prison. But then Lee approached him and said, "I can help you." Using a trick Lee taught him, Juan defeated the warden and got his leave. But before leaving, he told the warden that an even greater player had arrived at the prison and that the warden could play with him until Juan returned. The warden was such a fanatic that he would fulfill every wish of an inmate who played with him as long as they won. Lee realized that if he wanted to survive in this prison, he had to keep winning against the warden. He spent day and night thinking of ways to beat the warden, eventually becoming a genius at the game. A week later, when Juan returned, he thanked Lee for his help. Lee fell at his feet and pleaded, "Please, teach me how to fight." Juan felt indebted to him, so he agreed to train him. On his orders, the other inmates started beating Lee because his first lesson was to make his body capable of enduring pain. Before long, Lee also learned how to use his hands and feet in a fight. Whenever he won a game, the warden would give him high-quality food, which helped him build strength. By losing to Lee over and over, the warden also became an expert and won several Waikiki competitions. 7 years passed this way, and Lee's sentence was finally over. The warden wanted Lee to work for him outside, but Lee's priority was to take revenge on his brother's killers. Juan gave him a huge sum of money to finish the job quickly. On the other side, we see Kim, who had come to buy a super intelligent girl. The dealer gave the girl only 10 minutes to prove her skills, and in those 10 minutes, she won 4 Waikiki games. Kim was impressed by her talent, but when he agreed to pay $1 million to take her, the dealer immediately hiked the price. Kim didn't like it at all, but he was forced to pay more than the agreed amount. The goons thought They had successfully ripped him off. However, after putting the girl in the car, Kim went back and brutally killed the dealer and all his men. Next, we see a Waikiki champion who was winning a lot of money at Kim's club. To stop him from winning more, they sent in Erica. Thinking she was just an ordinary girl, the man bet all his money. His stupidity cost him dearly, and he lost everything he had won. Erica knew he owned millions in property, so she didn't take his money. Instead, she humiliated him, saying, "You aren't even fit to play this game," just so he would keep coming back to seek revenge for his loss and keep losing. Kim said, "Good job. Now take this kid and get her something to eat." Meanwhile, we see Lee, who had completely changed his appearance so he wouldn't be recognized. Lee walked into a restaurant and spotted the man who had killed his brother that night. He challenged him to a game, and Kang immediately agreed. Lee lost all his money to him one by one, making Kang think he had caught a real sucker. Kang called his people and told them he found a guy who wouldn't stop playing, even after losing everything. Lee then paid everyone to leave, leaving the two of them alone. Eventually, Kang bankrupted Lee completely. Thinking Lee had nothing left to bet, Kang started to leave, but Lee stopped him and said he wanted to play a game involving snapping clothespins on the forehead. Kang laughed at him, thinking the man had gone insane. They played another game, but this time Kang lost. Now he had to take 10 clothespin snaps to his forehead. He thought, what's the big deal? But Lee snapped them directly onto his nerves, causing Kang's vision to go black. By the second snap, blood started pouring from his forehead. Kang yelled, "That's enough!" But there were still 8 snaps left. Lee tied him to a pole and asked, "Do you recognize me?" Kang couldn't remember. Then Lee put on the same broken glasses he had worn that night. Kang realized this was Insang's brother. He begged for his life, but Lee showed no mercy and snapped the clothespins until he blinded both of Kang's eyes. Kang was screaming in pain, but there was still 1 snap left. Lee hit a specific nerve that killed him instantly. Next, we see another man who was Insang's friend 7 years ago. That day, he was also helping them cheat, but he ran away after they got caught. Since that day, Ben had quit gambling, but he still ran small-time frauds. One day, the people he had cheated caught him and started beating him mercilessly. They were about to kill him when Lee arrived. Lee told them to let him go, and when they refused, he beat them all up. Ben thanked him and started to leave, but Lee caught him and hung him from a roof. At first, Ben didn't understand why, but then he remembered that this was Insang's younger brother, Lee. Lee asked him, "How did you meet my brother?" Ben told him they were on the same team, a team where they had to play just to stay alive. Lee showed him a photo of Kim Wong and asked where he could find him. Ben got scared and said, "I've quit this business." As Ben was leaving, Lee said, "Think again. I'll pay you $3 million for this job." Hearing this, Ben's eyes lit up because he'd do anything for money. After that, the two went to the Korean streets. Lee was looking for someone who was a master at this game. He approached an elderly man who was famous in that area for his skills because, despite being blind, he could sense his opponent's moves and play perfectly. Lee played a game with him and lost. The old man said, "You are a much better player than me. Why did you let me win?" Lee just wanted to test him. He found out the man had lost both his eyes in an accident. Lee said, "I can't see out of one eye either, so I understand what you're going through." But Juan was a bit stubborn and said, "If you want to save your other eye, stay away from bad people. This useless bravado can get you killed." Lee said he needed his help, but Juan thanked him for the drink and started to walk away, thinking Lee would use his skills for something wrong. Lee replied, "A blind man has no dreams," and took him to see his daughter, who was living in extreme poverty. Lee promised that, if he helped, Lee would give a share of the winnings to his daughter so she could have a better life. Juan agreed to help, but he couldn't do it alone. So he went to a junkyard where his friend, a carpenter, worked. He asked the carpenter for help, but the man was still angry about something that happened years ago. It took some effort from Juan to convince him, but he eventually agreed. After that, Ben went into a gambling house wearing camera-equipped glasses to spy on them. Lee discovered that master players from all over the country tested their luck there, and no one dared to cheat. There was also a VIP room for high-stakes games. Their targets were only wealthy businessmen. Anyone caught in their trap would be bankrupted within a month. This is where Lee also found out about Erica. He learned she went to an expensive bar every evening to trap rich men. One day, Lee went and sat in that bar. An old man there was playing a game that required 4 people, and since there weren't enough players, he asked Lee to join. This was the first time Erica met Lee. She was immediately attracted to his style and the way he spoke. Meanwhile, the carpenter prepared a special microphone that was impossible to detect. They created a fake profile and a dummy business for Ben to make him look incredibly wealthy. Ben then walked into the gambling house like a spoiled rich brat and started betting all his money. He lost to everyone he played against and was bankrupted in no time. Everyone was shocked shocked that someone could be so stupid. But this was just the beginning. After losing to everyone in the club, Ben returned with another bag full of cash and started playing. Soon, that money was gone too. People thought he'd stop, but Ben didn't. He went outside, sold his car keys, his gold watch, and everything in his pockets for cash. Ben lost that money too, and then threw a massive tantrum. He started crying loudly, but this was all part of their plan. The manager was watching his every move, and once they were sure nothing was fishy, they decided to trap him. The next day, Ben returned with yet another bag of cash. Lee was also there, but the real game was happening behind the scenes. Won gave Ben instructions through the microphone, and this time Ben won. The loser thought Ben had cheated and demanded a search. But after a thorough search, they found nothing because Ben had already hidden the microphone in a cigarette pack and gotten it out. The manager apologized for the trouble and offered Ben a game, but Ben turned him down, saying he wasn't in the mood. Outside, he gave money to the waiter who had helped him and said he'd be back tomorrow. Meanwhile, we see Erica, who had become good friends with Lee. Kim Wong came and sat next to them. The old man asked Lee what he did for a living, and Lee told him he was developing a program for the Waikiki game, a special algorithm that could easily defeat humans. This caught Kim's attention immediately, because if it were true, Lee could be very useful to him. After everyone left, when Lee and Erica were alone, they started getting closer. Lee began to feel like it might be love. But in reality, Erica was spying on him on Kim's orders. Lee told Ben to go alone the next day. The manager would let him win, and that's exactly what happened. The manager intentionally lost, so that Ben would bet a larger amount next time. Ben agreed to another game, but said, "This time, we'll play at my place." Blinded by greed, the manager made the mistake of thinking Ben was a fool and went to the location Ben provided the next day. The manager thoroughly checked Ben's van, but found no electronic devices that could be used for cheating. He thought the game was in his hands. However, the carpenter had built a special Waikiki board that revealed the exact position of the opponent's pieces. Ben used this board to win, with Juan giving him instructions from behind. Frustrated by his loss, the manager couldn't figure out how this idiot had won. He had lost $2 million, and he had to recover it at any cost, or else Kim Wong wouldn't spare him. To make up for the loss, he went back to play the next day, but this time, he brought a Waikiki champion to give him instructions. It was a neck-and-neck match, but Juan saved the day at the last moment and led Ben to victory. The manager, fuming with rage, pulled a knife and started threatening Ben. Before he could kill him, Lee arrived. A brutal fight broke out between them, but the manager was no match for Lee. Lee beat him severely, and when the Waikiki champion saw him getting thrashed, he tried to run, but the carpenter rammed his car into him and caught him. When the manager regained consciousness, he found himself naked in an ice factory. Lee was sitting across from him in the same state and challenged him to a game. The rule was simple: the winner gets to leave. They started making their moves, but within seconds, the temperature dropped below the freezing point, slowing their blood flow. The manager realized he'd die before the game even ended, so he grabbed a nearby knife and attacked Lee. But Lee beat him down. He gave the manager a paper with the codes to shut off the freezer and walked away. The manager tried to crack the code, but he froze to death. Meanwhile, Lee reached Erica. He wanted to play a game with her too, but his condition was that if he won, she would be his forever. Erica had also started loving him, but couldn't express it. She started to walk away, but Lee grabbed her hand. He pulled her close, and they shared an intimate moment. The next day, Kim found his manager's rotting corpse in the ice factory. Lee called him and said he wanted to play a similar game with him, but the loser would have to pay with their life. Following Lee's hint, Kim went to Master Chan, whom Lee had left alive. Chan said, "I've seen that man. I'll pay back every penny of the money you lost." But Kim was more interested in what the man's next move would be. He received a message challenging Chan to a match. If Chan lost, he'd have to give up his tongue. Chan tried to explain that it was a trap and that Lee wanted to kill him, but Kim didn't care about Chan's life. He forced Chan to accept the challenge, and the match began. Lee wasn't cheating here. He wanted to defeat Chan himself. Chan, who was shaking with fear at first, regained his confidence when he saw he was winning, but in his overconfidence, he made a wrong move and lost. As per the bet, Kim had to cut out his tongue. Chan tried to run, but Kim's men caught him, and Kim cut out Chan's tongue with his own hands. When Kim looked out the window, he saw the same man who had talked about the computer program. Kim realized that Lee hadn't done this randomly. It was years of planning. On the other side, we see Lee and his friends celebrating their victory. Ben asked Uncle Juan where he learned to play Waikiki so well. Juan told them that years ago, when he used to sell toys on the street, a man came to him and asked to play a game. Juan said, "I'm blind, we can't play." But the man brought him a tool that allowed blind people to play. They played every day for a year. But then the man stopped coming. No one knew who he was, but he taught Juan a lot before he left. Lee told them, "I think I know that man. He's the one who told me about you in prison. Lee explained that the man played Waikiki with him every day in his solitary cell and won every time. When Lee was finally released from solitary, he tried to look into the man's cell, but the man had suddenly vanished. Lee hoped to meet him outside, but just like with Juan, he never returned. Whoever that mysterious person was, he had helped them both a lot. The next day, Uncle Juan made a request to Ben. He wanted to meet his daughter and needed help fixing his appearance. Ben dressed him up in a suit, making him look like a total gentleman. But when they reached his daughter's house, they found Kim's men waiting for them. They captured both of them and brought them to Kim. Kim, furious over the death of his men, tortured Ben. He broke all of Ben's fingers and was about to slit his throat when he changed his mind. He gave Ben one chance to live, but he had to play a game and risk his life. Uncle Juan knew Ben couldn't win, so he decided to play in his place. He challenged Kim, saying that if he won, he wanted Kim's head. But Kim was crafty. He didn't give Juan the board designed for the blind. This meant Juan had to make every move based only on estimation. The game began, but Kim cheated as usual, using the little girl to help him win. Soon, the game became intense. Despite everything being against him, Juan gave him a tough fight. When Kim realized he was about to lose, he did something disgusting and scattered all the game pieces. Juan knew that even if he won, Kim would kill him anyway, so he attacked Kim the moment he got a chance. Kim showed no mercy and stabbed Juan multiple times, leaving him fatally wounded. When Lee found out they had kidnapped Uncle Juan and Ben, he rushed to Kim's hideout. He saw Juan covered in blood and in pain, while Kim was grinding Ben's head under his foot. Kim said that if Lee won, he'd spare Ben's life. In exchange, Kim let him take Juan away, but Juan told him, "Don't play the game. You won't win because a child is making the moves." Lee wanted to save them at any cost because he had promised nothing would happen to them. But due to heavy blood loss, Juan passed away. Meanwhile, Kim went to Erica and said, "If you want to stay alive, play well this time." Erica begged him to spare the little girl's life, but Kim was a total psycho. He ordered his man to kill them both if he lost. The game between Lee and Kim began, and Lee made the first move. Kim thought that since Lee had killed the old man, he wouldn't last long against him, but he had no idea that Lee had practiced for years for this very day. Elsewhere, we see the carpenter taking Juan's body away when Kim's men surrounded him. They had no idea they had made a huge mistake by killing his friend. The carpenter fought them all without caring for his own life. He was alone against many, but despite their numbers, they couldn't touch him. Back at the game, Lee was winning, but Kim said, "If you win, your lover dies." You know that, right? Kim's man held a knife to Erica's throat and told her not to think about betraying them. But Erica signaled the little girl to make the game a draw. Following her lead, the girl told Kim to make moves. That led the game to a point where, even if they played for the rest of their lives, no one would win. The game was heading for a draw from every angle. Kim realized she had been clever. Furious, he called everyone outside. In a fit of rage, he stabbed Erica in the stomach right in front of Lee and forced him to watch her suffer. But by doing that, Kim made a fatal mistake because Erica was the only reason Lee had been holding back. Lee attacked them and started a total massacre. Fearing for his life, Kim fought back. Taking advantage of the chaos, Kim sneakily stabbed Lee with a dagger. However, Lee was wearing a safety vest, so he survived. Now, only the two of them were left. Kim tried to kill him with a knife, but Lee threw Kim across the room. Kim was badly injured, but he still fought with all his might. Finally, Lee stabbed and killed Kim with his own weapon. The game was over, and he had won the war, but he had paid a heavy price. A few weeks later, Lee went to meet Uncle Juan's daughter and gave her a check. The amount was so large she couldn't believe her eyes. He fulfilled his promise to Uncle Juan and was sure it would bring peace to his soul. After that, he went to his brother's daughter, gave her a phone and some money, and told her, "Keep this money safe, and if you ever need anything, remember me. You aren't alone anymore. I'll always be with you." We see the carpenter making a statue in memory of his friend. Lee returned everyone's share of the money, but there was one debt he could never repay. In the end, he returned to the street where he first met Uncle Juan. He placed Juan's favorite drink on the street for him and started to walk away. Just then, a shiny, luxurious car pulled up in front of him. Ben, Erica, and the little girl were inside. They had all survived. And with that, the movie ends. I hope you enjoyed the story. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.